Good morning from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Joining me now, we have Avik Roy, healthcare policy advisor to Mitt Romney, Joan Walsh, author of What's the Matter with White People? Why We Long for a Golden Age That Never Was, editor at largeislam.com. I'm 2 chapters into it, and it is fantastic. I recommend you check it out. Elise Jordan, contributor to thedailybeast.com and former speechwriter to Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and Sophia Nelson, author of Black Women Redefined, Dispelling Myths and Discovering Fulfillment in the Age of Michelle Obama, former Republican counsel to the House Government Operations Committee, now columnist for our sister website, thegrio.com. Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
I got enough to worry about doing this speech. You think I'm going there and starting to worry about the platform, you forget about it.
This is the platform of the Republican Party. It's not the platform of Mitt Romney.
Republicans would like you to believe their party platform is unimportant. They would like you to ignore it and focus on Mitt Romney. But as the Republican Party becomes an increasingly parliamentary and ideologically maximist organization, this election is as much about the nature of the Republican Party as it is about its candidate. So today, I want to ask, what is the Republican Party? Who controls it, and what answers does this document provide to those questions? Avik, I'll start with you. There's a few theories about who's driving the train in the modern Republican Party. So the theory that you hear often on our network, and the one that I think I'm partial to, but I think is plausibly rebuttable, is that the hard right is driving the train of the modern Republican Party. And if you look at the votes, you look at what the agenda of, say, the House Republican Caucus has been, it has been to pursue the objectives of social conservatives, particularly. There's been a lot of stuff about abortion and contraception, and generally has had an ideological flavor that is to the right of where the center of America is, and certainly to the rightist part of the Republican coalition. There's an argument that actually, when you look at the last 2 nominees, John McCain and Mitt Romney, this is the sort of other side of it. I'll just argue both sides, but then I'll let you talk. That if you look at the nominees, John McCain and Mitt Romney, that the right-wing base of the party didn't get its wish with either John McCain and Mitt Romney, hence Sarah Palin, hence Paul Ryan. And I'm curious to get your feedback to that Reince Priebus quote. This is not Mitt Romney's platform. This is the Republican Party.
Well, I'd say a couple of things. Excuse me. In both parties, the activists are always going to be driving the agenda, and the platforms are going to be the ones who are pushing the candidates, particularly in the primaries, to adhere to certain principles. I think what's interesting is how the Republican Party's activist base has evolved. So in the 1990s, there was more of this social conservatism emphasis. Today, it's much more about constitutionalism. It's much more about economics. It's much more about the budget deficit. It's much more about the debt. That's very much the driver of the Republican Party today in a way that wasn't true 15, 20 years ago.
I'm glad you raised that, because people say that, and I don't buy it.
You look at, would George H.W. Bush be able to be a contender today? I don't think so, and I think that's a real tragedy. I personally love George H.W. Bush. I liked Bob Dole. Bob Dole is saying recently that we're going too far right, and I think that it's really an off-putting trend to millennials, who they might be attracted to the Republican platform in terms of fiscal conservatism, but when it comes to social issues, they're like, no, get out of the bedroom. We like gay people.
Yep.
So I'll take the other side of that. So I actually think that the evolution has been much more towards economics, and we see this naturally with the millennials. So one thing that's been interesting about the last 20 years is it used to be that the center of the GOP was Texas, and I've spent some time in Texas. I've lived there. I love Texas. But right now what we see is what's the political center of gravity of Republicanism. It's Wisconsin. It's Michigan, right? That upper Midwest is naturally, historically, what the home of Republicanism has been for 100, 150 years. And I think that's what we will see as millennials continue to get older, as the social issues, the consensus on social issues changes. I'm not sure it'll change on abortion. Actually, 50% of Americans are pro-life today. That's the highest number the Gallup poll has ever reported.
Depending on how you ask the question.
To define themselves pro-life, but if you ask, should abortion be illegal in all circumstances, which is the official position of the Republican Party in the platform, that is a small minoritarian position, just as a matter of
the
public
Democratic platform position is on the other.
Right, yeah, right.
It's a mistake, and it's a total distraction from what should be the real issue in this election, the economy.
I don't think it will distract from the election.
Oh, it
absolutely has.
Smaller government, let's say. And then there's social conservatism, right? And one of the things that happened was, I think, social conservatism was quite dominant during the George W. Bush years. There was so much, remember how much, there was so much coverage of the evangelical base, and George W. Bush, the first born-again president. And then the Tea Party was all about this sort of economic turn. But whatever the emphasis was, the fact remains it's still the same folks. I mean, it's still the same people in the coalition.
There isn't a philosophical inconsistency, right? So when you have something like the HHS contraception mandate, the small government people say, why should the government be telling us what insurance policies must cover?
Right.
The social conservatives get upset because they're like, why should Catholics have to?
And that's why I think
their faith.
I think that's why Republicans saw that as such a huge political opportunity, not necessarily because of the political gains to be won among independents, although that was part of it. It's a delightfully unifying issue for different parts of the coalition, right?
They don't want to hear their nominee as they produce this platform go, oh, that's not my platform. Or the party chairman say, well, that's not his platform. It doesn't mean anything to him.
It's so
that's
cynical.
not what they don't want to hear that. All that does is stirs up more passion.
We have this conversation every 4 years.
To something else.
We have this conversation every 4 years about every platform. It's a sport. Every time there's a platform, people say, oh, well, there's this on the platform that is different from what the candidate thinks, different from what maybe the consensus in the country is. We always talk about it. And then we forget about it, because at the end of the day, it is about the candidate.
Draw that out, though. We forget about it. Why? Because, so you're basically saying that the entire thing is a purely cynical exercise to write things in paper as a sop to placate people.
No, I think it is a statement of what activists in the party, the consensus among activists in the party believe should be the core of activist conservatism or activist liberalism. But that is different from what a candidate who's appealing to the center of the country is going to try to do.
But the question is, do those activists, should Mitt Romney be president, how much purchase do they have in that White House? I mean, that's the open question, right?
Very little. Very little. I think they have more.
Do you hear that, Do you hear that, Republican activists?
Very little.
You have very little purchase on a Mitt Romney presidency. I'm not sure if I believe that. At least I want to get your thoughts. We got to take a quick break. You just said something interesting before we went to the break, which is basically, the base is not going to be controlling things in a Mitt Romney.
The base influences things for sure. So they influence the terms of the debate. They influence the primaries. They influence who gets elected to Congress. They influence who staffs an administration. But it's also true that there is a need to win elections. There's a need to both move the debate in your direction, but also appeal to the people in the center. And that's the tension. So as activists, your job is to move the debate in your direction. So pro-life activists try to move the country in a pro-life direction. Gay marriage activists try to move the country in a pro-gay marriage direction. That's what activists do. And the candidates reflect how that debate changes over time.
Medicare is a genuine problem, actuarially, mostly because of the rise of healthcare costs. Right. And we were here when Paul Ryan...
We were here 2 weeks ago, and everyone was saying, this is going to be so great that Paul Ryan is on the ticket. We're going to be able to jump on that and show that Republicans are extreme. And what's happened in the last 2 weeks? That's not how it's played out.
Well, what's happened in the last 2 weeks is that Paul Ryan has gone out and told everyone, no, they're the ones cutting Medicare. We're the defenders of Medicare. That's what he's done.
Long-term reforms that will make the program.
Yes, that's in the fine text. But the thing he's leading with, the thing they're leading with is, don't worry, seniors of America, we will not cut the social contract for you. So the point is that they want to have it both ways, and this is actually further evidence of my thesis that they will not cut government. They will change who government benefits.
Democrats have set the terms of that debate, right? Democrats are the ones saying Paul Ryan's going to push Granny off a cliff. So Republicans have responded with a plan that protects current seniors and makes long-term reforms. I'm sure that in a different
program into vouchers.
No, that's not exactly true.
Racism, the common and casual racism that periodically flares up, drives people away.
Listen, I mean, there's two. Michael Steele talks about how Republicans need to reach out more, et cetera. And certainly it's true that Republicans should reach out more. But there are two sides to this coin. Democrats seize on every little thing and gin up racial resentment by saying Republicans are racist. Every Republican is racist. Every Republican policy is racist. Free markets are racist. Devolving government to the state is racist.
Free markets are racist.
What Democrat? National politics.
Name one.
I may have heard that in a campus meeting that free markets are racist, but national Democrats saying free markets are racist.
It's the downstream logic of saying cutting taxes is racist, having more free markets.
Yes, Michael.
Can I just address that? Because that, with all due respect to Avik, this rubs me when I hear that. I don't have time to worry about what the other guy is saying about me if I'm doing my job.
Absolutely.
If I'm defining the conversation, you can talk all day long about, Marxists and racists and how Republicans hate black people, because black people will know from me how I feel about
really
them.
want in
The
on this
problem
bad,
is they don't.
I spent last night reading the parts of the Republican Party draft platform that are available on the web. And what was most interesting to me in that entire document that I managed to read was the section on law and order. This was the blood and the guts of the rise of the modern conservative movement. It really drove things. And if you read the document today, it could have been written by the Soros Institute. It is so bland, so bloodless.
This is progress, though, isn't it? You say it sort of.
No. But my point being is that it shows you the diminishing power of those Republican.
Can I disagree with that though? Because we've got Matt Drudge and we've got Rush Limbaugh and we've got race war over there.
But the question is, how far can they take it, though? But the question is, they rode that into as a majority party.
Well, I don't know.
The question is whether or not it's now become an echo chamber.
Law and order was a legitimate public policy problem. There was a lot of crime, and crime disproportionately affects black people, right? So the success we've had in the last 20 years of dealing with the crime problem has helped blacks and helped minorities more than anybody.
Let's just say this, though.
I went back. It's a good thing, and it helps minorities.
I'm not debating whether it's good or bad. My point is that this was such a salient issue, and it's really
because it was
Mitt Romney, I'm kind of afraid to talk about the high number of African Americans. He goes to the NAACP, he gets booed. He made some good points, but he has no credibility. That's the problem.
Let's remember that George Romney, his father, marched in the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
He was a prominent, I think the Romney family has plenty of street cred.
But that doesn't help you. No, it doesn't.
His father does, but continue the story. Continue the story of George Romney, which is that was essentially the moment in which he broke from the Republican Party precisely over that. And in fact, he doesn't, if I'm not mistaken, he doesn't attend the 64 convention where Goldwater is nominated.
He walked out.
Yeah, he walks out. He attends and then he walks out precisely over its opposition to civil rights.
Right.
So
he didn't walk out of the Republican Party, though.
He walked out of the convention,
President in 1968.
Finally, you should know that I'll be part of MSNBC's live coverage of the Republican National Convention Tuesday through Thursday of this week from 7 p.m. to midnight. Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews, Lawrence O'Donnell, Al Sharpton, Ed Schultz, and a whole bunch of others will all be part of the coverage as well, so tune in. There will most certainly be a whole lot to talk about. I want to find out what my guests think we should know for the week coming up. I will begin with you, Mr. Avik Roy.
What you should know is that the Republican bench is strong. What you're going to find out this week at the convention is that there are governors like Bobby Jindal, like Chris Christie, senators like Marco Rubio. These are the rising stars of the Republican Party, and these are names you're going to be hearing a lot of, like Paul Ryan, 2016, 2020, 2024. So this is going to be the first convention where we really get to see these people in action at the height of their political prominence.
Marco Rubio has the big. He's not giving the keynote, but he's giving the speech just before Mitt Romney, I believe, introducing him on Thursday night, if that doesn't change. Joan Walsh.
Well, you should know that the Republican Party is about 90% white, but our panelists today showed us that there may be a different kind of future. We ended the week with Mitt Romney descending into birtherism as a joke, and it's going to be interesting to see if any of the future party that you hope that we're going to see and that Michael Steele tells us we need to see is going to be on display. We're just going to have to find out.
It'll be very interesting to see how all of that. I want to thank my guest today, Mitt Romney, advisor. Mitt Romney. Thank you, Mitt Romney. Mitt advisor Avik Roy. Read the next line in the teleprompter, Chris. MSNBC political analyst Joan Walsh, transportation consultant Wendell Cox, and architect Michael Bell. Thank you all, and thank you for joining us.